You don't belong here." Her voice rang out sharp and cold, slicing through the laughter and jazz like a blade. Everything stopped. Music, chatter, even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The woman in the crimson gown, elegant, flawless, cruel, stood center deck, pointing straight at him. And just like that, every head on the yacht turned. He didn't flinch, not yet. But something behind his eyes hardened. The lights from the chandeliers swayed overhead, gold threads glimmering on the polished wood floor. Guests in diamonds and tailored suits hovered like vultures around the edges, their expressions hovering between amusement and discomfort. She took a step forward. Her heels echoed louder than the music. "I don't know who let you in, but this is a curated list. A private yacht. My father runs this world." And you, she laughed softly, bitterly. "You clearly don't." Still, he said nothing. "You're making the guests uncomfortable," she pressed. "So I'll say it again, leave now." You ever been in a place where the room's silence was louder than anything you could say? That's what it felt like. No one defended him. No one even moved. And just as he turned to leave, she stepped closer and flung the contents of her champagne glass across his chest. The splash was almost elegant, like it was choreographed. A few people gasped. One woman laughed behind her hand. Someone's phone was already recording. "You spilled something," she smirked. "But don't worry, you probably can't afford the cleaning bill anyway." He looked down at his soaked shirt, took a breath, and then a quiet voice from behind. "Sir, I know who you are." It was the young server, nervous, but firm, holding a towel, whispering just loud enough for the man to hear. And something changed. His posture, his eyes, his decision. "Now let me ask you, if someone did that to you, met you in front of 100 strangers, would you walk away quietly? Or would you let the room know exactly who they were messing with?" Because when he stood up straight and turned back to face the crowd, that's when the chaos started. And the moment that came next would leave every guest on the yacht questioning everything they thought they knew. He didn't raise his voice, didn't slam a glass or shout a name. He just straightened his back, and that one small movement hit harder than any speech. The soaked champagne clung to his tailored shirt, now sticky under the deck lights. But he didn't flinch. He looked at her, the woman in the red dress, still holding her empty flute like a victory flagon. He nodded once. Then, calmly, he reached into his inside jacket pocket. A few guests gasped. One woman whispered, "Is he pulling out a phone? A threat? A lawsuit?" But what came out was a card. Just a simple business card. Black, matte finish, gold lettering. He held it up not to her, but to the server. "Would you kindly deliver this to Mr. Caldwell?" The server took it with both hands, like he was holding something holy, because he knew that name. And from the widening eyes across the crowd, others were starting to recognize it too. The card read, Marcus D. Harlan, founder and CEO, Avalon Capital Group, the name behind half the acquisitions in the last 2 years. The silent force funding the expansion of this very yacht brand. And yet this man had been doused in wine and told to leave like he was disposable. What would you do if your name suddenly echoed through a crowd that had just tried to erase you? Would you stay calm? Or would your voice tremble with the urge to shout back? Marcus didn't shout. He simply stepped aside, waited. Seconds later, a tall man in a blue linen blazer appeared at the stairs host. Her father. Marcus, his face paled. What happened? The crowd parted. The daughter froze. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "Dad, I didn't know." But it was too late. The host took one look at the card in the server's hand and then at the stain on Marcus's chest. And something shifted. His lips tightened. He turned, slowly, toward his daughter. "Go inside," he said coldly. "Now." She hesitated. "I said now." She vanished down the spiral stairs, heels clacking in the feet. The music hadn't resumed. No one danced. No one dared move. Marcus glanced around the deck, took in every gaze, some ashamed, some stunned, some curious. Then he said, clear and steady, "I came here tonight to celebrate a new investment, but instead, I became a lesson and how easily some people still judge power by appearance. And just like Faith walked toward the railing, watching the city lights shimmer across the water, you could almost hear hearts beating in sync with the waves. And here's what I want to ask you. Have you ever stood in a room where you had to pretend you didn't hear the insult just to protect your peace? If so, I see you. And trust me, Marcus did too. But this wasn't over. Because the next phone call he made, that's the one that would shake the entire yacht club's foundation. And it all started with 3 quiet words. The phone in his hand didn't glow. It was an older model. No flashy case, no sparkle, just quiet power. Marcus pressed one button. A calm voice picked up on the other end. "This is Reynolds." He didn't smile, didn't blink. "Activate the clause," Marcus said softly. "Pull everything." There was a pause, then a single word, "Understood." He ended the call, slid the phone back into his pocket, and turned toward the water. His reflection stared back at him from the rippling black wave-stained shirt, calm eyes. A man used to holding storms inside. Behind him, whispers swirled like the sea breeze. Wait, what clause? Did he just cancel something? Who is this guy really? They didn't know. Not yet, but they would. See, what no one on that yacht understood what even the host had forgotten in his hunger to impress his Tenors was that Marcus wasn't just a guest. He was the guest of honor. The entire gala was supposed to celebrate a partnership of Capital's investment in the host's maritime company. Marcus had helped save their business from folding last year, quietly, discreetly, like he always did. He never asked for his name on banners. He just asked to be treated like a human being. But even that was too much tonight. Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a room where no one knew your value and been treated like you were invisible, and then asked yourself, should I speak or should I stay silent just to stay safe? Marcus had walked into hundreds of rooms like that, from boardrooms to ballrooms. But tonight something was different, because tonight he was done being silent. Inside the yacht's main cabin, the daughter watched from behind a tinted window. Her hands shook as she texted some Ian. The sound of notifications filled the air, but no one responded. And then a chime rang out. It was the yacht's central system, a voice alert. Attention guests, due to a change in investor status, tonight's event will be concluding early. Please prepare for docking. Gasps, confusion, then realization. A woman dropped her drink. A man swore under his breath. Another checked the event brochure. The host came back out, red-faced, trying to explain, but no one was listening, because Marcus had already begun walking toward the exit. No security, no fanfare. Just footsteps across hardwood, echoing with every choice he'd made. And yet he paused, turned, faced the crowd one last time. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone, he said, but I won't pay to be humiliated either. Then he nodded at the server, the only one who'd spoken up. Get your resume ready. My office will call you Monday. The server's eyes widened, his voice caught in his throat, but he nodded, fast, like someone just handed him a second life. And you, if you were the young server, would you believe this moment was real? Would you even know what to say? Now imagine this. A man walks out of a party early Alani, and the next morning, his silence becomes the loudest story in the city. But that wasn't even the end, because Marcus still had one more move left. A move that wouldn't just end a deal. It would rewrite how every name on that guest list was remembered. Before I tell you what Marcus did next, I know you might be busy. Maybe you're watching this during your lunch break, or maybe your brain's already full from everything you just heard. But if stories like this make you feel something, if they remind you that quiet power still exists, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next might be the most satisfying twist you've heard all week. Let's go back to that night. Marcus stepped off the yacht alone. The wind had picked up. City lights shimmered against the waves like they were applauding him. But his face, still calm, still unreadable. Back in his hotel suit, simple, minimalist, floor-to-ceiling windows, poured a glass of water. Not wine, no celebration, just clarity. He sat at the desk, opened his laptop, and for the first time that night, he allowed himself a sigh. Because truthfully, that wasn't the first time someone tried to make him feel small. You ever felt that? Like no matter how much you achieve, you still have to prove yourself in rooms you built. Marcus had, again and again and again. Boardrooms where he was called too aggressive. Investor meetings where someone assumed he was just a rep. Luncheons where assistants were treated better than him until the check came. But tonight was different. Because tonight, it happened in public. And this time, there were consequences. He pulled up a document titled Equity Redemption Clause, signed it, then opened his email. Subject, effective immediately. He hit send. Within minutes, phones started buzzing across the city, in offices, in penthouses, in boardrooms where his name wasn't even spoken out loud, just nodded it with respect. The press hadn't picked up the story yet, but they would, because Marcus hadn't gone quietly. He triggered a full audit of the yacht company's leadership practices. He'd paused deals worth over $28 million. He'd issued a statement simple, powerful. Any institution that allows public humiliation based on assumption will no longer receive our support, period. Let me ask you honestly, if you had the power to end a toxic culture, would you use it? Even if it cost you partnerships, invitations, a seat at the table? Marcus did, not to prove a point, but to protect the next person who'd walk into the room after him and get asked, "Who invited you?" Now picture this. The same girl who threw wine on him just hours before was trending online, not for her outfit, but for being the girl who tried to kick out the billionaire. And guess who reposted it with one quiet caption? Marcus. Just 3 words. That was enough. And it was. But only the beginning, because someone else was watching that night too. And what she saw would flip the story completely. She had been watching from the shadows, not on the yacht, not among the crowd, but from a speedboat moored just beyond the glow of the party lights. A woman in her late 30s, blonde hair tied back, white linen blouse, no makeup, just her and a pair of binoculars and silence. Her name, Claire Dalton. And while most of the world knew her as the daughter of one of the largest shipping magnates in North America, very few knew what she really did. She was the compliance director for 3 multi-billion-dollar firms, 2 of which had deals pending with Avalon Capital. And she'd seen it all. She wasn't supposed to be there that night. The yacht party had been arranged by her father's company, but she never liked those glittery charades. Instead, she'd chosen to watch from a distance, curious. She'd heard whispers about Marcus Harlan, the ghost investor, the one who never showed up in photos, but made entire boards tremble with a call. But tonight she saw something more than power. She saw restraint, grace under fire, and that more than the titles or balance sheets was what shook her. Because let me ask you, have you ever witnessed someone being disrespected and just known that this moment would change everything? Claire didn't record a video. She didn't need to. She was already planning the next steps. By sunrise, she had drafted an internal memo. By noon, she pulled all social media mentions of the yacht incident into a private archive. And by 3 p.m., she called a meeting. It was short. To be clear, she said to her team, "We're not just watching a peer crisis. We're watching a shift in capital loyalty." She paused. "And if we don't move now, we'll be left behind." Meanwhile, Marcus, he didn't post another word. He didn't need to. The story had taken a life of its own. Comment sections flooded with questions. Why was he treated like that? Do people still act like this in 2025? How many times has this happened to people without cameras watching? Some comments hit harder than others. One said, "My dad's been working at a country club for 25 years. This happened to him too. But he didn't have a camera. Just shame." Another read, "Power isn't money. It's how you act when no one's clapping." Marcus read them, all of them, and for the first time in a long time, he smiled. Not out of revenge, but relief, because the weight wasn't his alone anymore. Now, can I ask you something? Have you ever had a moment where the world finally said what you were too tired to repeat? Where strangers echoed your pain louder than you ever could? That's what Marcus felt that day. But what he didn't know was that Claire had just made a decision behind closed doors, one that would not only bring their paths together, but put Marcus at the center of a boardroom none of them saw coming. Claire didn't wait for permission. She didn't ask her father. She didn't consult PR. She just sent the email. Subject: Proposal Avalon Merge Strategy. 2. Board of Dalton Maritime Holdings. Her opening line: "It's time we stop funding systems that embarrass our future partners." Attached was a confidential pitch deck. On the second slide, a name in bold: Marcus D. Harlan, interim board advisor, proposed position. That single suggestion sparked a storm. The boardroom buzzed within minutes. Some resisted. He embarrassed the family. Others hesitated. Won't this look like an apology? But Claire stood firm. "You think he embarrassed us," she said. "No, we embarrassed ourselves. He gave us a chance to correct it. And if we don't, he'll take the quiet money and build a fleet that buries us in 5 years." Silence. One board member finally said what everyone was thinking. "So you want to offer him a seat?" Claire nodded. "No, I want to offer him power. The kind he doesn't have to hide behind cards or titles anymore." Meanwhile, Marcus was back in his office. Top floor, no logos, no receptionist, just a private elevator, a wall of quiet bookshelves, and a window overlooking the city he'd built his legacy in. He stared at a photo on the desk, an old man his grandfather's milling, covered in oil and grit, standing beside a truck he never finished paying off. Marcus used to wonder, would that man even recognize him today? Would he understand that some battles can't be won with fists or speeches, only with silence and leverage? Then, his assistant knocked softly. A message from Claire Dalton. She's requesting a private meeting. He didn't flinch, didn't smile. "Where?" She said, "Wherever you feel safest." He paused, thought about the irony of that phrase, then said quietly, "Here, tomorrow, noon." Now let me ask you something real. Have you ever had someone finally treat you not like a threat or a token, but like a peer? Someone who saw the value you carry in it, just the image people fear. That's what Marcus was about to face. But before that meeting, he took a moment for himself. A walk, alone, down a familiar street. He passed a corner where, years ago, he was denied a job for not being the right fit. He walked by a bank where he was asked for extra identification when depositing his first million. And then, he stopped outside a piano store. The same one he used to window shop as a kid. The same one he swore he'd buy his mother a piano from when I make it. He stepped inside, quietly. The manager looked up, ready to greet another casual browser, then froze, because Marcus didn't say a word. He just pointed. "That one," he said, "grand. Walnut, delivery today." He paid in full. No questions, no speech. Just one quiet act to remind himself already made it. And now, he was about to prove that power doesn't just walk into boardrooms. Sometimes it gets invited in with the door held wide open. But the real surprise? It wasn't the meeting with Claire. It was who showed up before her and what they brought in their hands. The knock came at 11:47 a.m. 13 minutes early. Marcus was seated at the far end of the long conference table. No assistants, no laptops. Just a carafe of water and the glasses, untouched. He wasn't expecting Claire yet, but when the door opened, it wasn't her. It was a man in a navy suit, crisp but understated, gray at the temples, thick file folder in hand. Behind him, a younger woman mid-20s, carrying a briefcase. "Mr. Harlan," the man said, voice low. "We won't take long." Marcus didn't respond, just gestured to the chairs. The man sat first, the younger woman stayed standing, silently opening the folder on the table. And what she placed down made Marcus lean forward. A photo. The yacht. That night, a screenshot from the security system clear as day. Her face. His chest. Soaked. The crowd. Frozen. "We know you didn't leak this," the man said calmly. "But someone in the Dalton circle did. And now, it's a problem. For them or for me?" Marcus asked. The man almost smiled. "Depends on how you want to play it." That's when the younger woman spoke for the first time. We're from the Internal Ethics Oversight Division, she said, a newly formed branch under the State Financial Review Board. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Didn't know that existed. It does now, she said, because of you. He stared at her, trying to read between the lines. We're not here to warn you, the older man said. We're here to ask if you consider something bigger. Bigger than a board seat, Marcus asked. Much bigger. And then they said it. Not a job offer. Not a title. Not even a campaign. A movement. An institutional shift, using Marcus not just as a figurehead but as an architect of change. Quiet. Deliberate. Unstoppable. He listened. Didn't nod. Didn't flinch. And just before they finished, Claire walked in. The moment her eyes landed on the folder, her smile faltered. You briefed him without me. The older man stood, smoothing his jacket. We didn't need to brief him. We needed to confirm he's still what we hoped. He turned to Marcus. You'll let us know. And with that, they left. Claire stayed behind. Silence thickened between them for a moment. Then she sat down. I didn't plan that, she said. But I'm glad you heard it. He studied her carefully. Why? Because if you say yes to them, we all follow. There was no flattery in her voice. Just fact. Then she did something unexpected. She slid a worn notebook across the table. Marcus opened it. Page 1. A photo. Grainy. From years ago. A much younger Claire at a scholarship award ceremony. Standing in front of a sign that read, Avalon Future Leaders Grant. I never told you, she said. But you funded my degree. Quietly. Anonymously. He blinked. She smiled. I've been watching your silence for a long time. Maybe it's time we speak. Now tell me something. Have you ever helped someone quietly, without ever knowing, and years later, they return not to thank you, but to stand beside you? Because in that room, that day, something shifted, and what Marcus said next would set the tone for an entire new chapter of power. One not built on loudness, but on memory, accountability, and truth. But just as he reached for the notebook again, his phone buzzed. One message, no name, just 4 words. She's back, be ready. And Marcus turned cold. Marcus stared at the screen. Just 4 words. She's back, be ready. His fingers curled slowly around the phone. The edges dug into his skin, grounding him back in the moment. Claire noticed the shift. His jaw tightened, shoulders stiffened. The air felt different, like someone had opened a door to a colder room. Something wrong? She asked quietly. Marcus didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood, walked to the window. The city looked the same, live, towering, unbothered. But inside him, something had stirred, something he'd buried. Years ago, her name was Naomi Trask. Not many people remembered her, not anymore. But Marcus did. She was brilliant, fearless, a rising name in venture capital, once poised to become the youngest black woman to run her own fund. And she'd almost made it, until someone leaked a manipulated audit to the press. Contracts pulled, reputation shattered, career erased. Marcus had always believed it was a setup, political, calculated, personal. And he had a hunch who orchestrated it. What no one knew. Naomi wasn't just a colleague. She was once the only person who knew Marcus before Marcus. Before Avalon. Before the silence. They built their first pitch deck on a cracked laptop and a basement library. She taught him how to see numbers like music. He taught her how to make them sing for rooms that didn't want to hear. Then she vanished. Or so he thought. Now someone had texted him. She's back. And that meant one thing. The past wasn't done with him. Let me ask you something. Have you ever buried a memory so deep you convinced yourself it never mattered, only to find it clawing back to the surface right when you thought you'd outrun it? Because that's what Marcus felt now. Claire's voice cut through the silence. Was that about Naomi? He turned slowly. You know her. I watched her TED Talk in college, memorized it, and I watched her get destroyed, too. Her eyes softened. But if she's back, what does that mean for you? He didn't speak, because he didn't know. But one thing was certain. If Naomi had returned, she wasn't coming quietly. And the question now wasn't just what she wanted. It was whether Marcus was ready to face a part of himself he tried for years to forget. The version of him that wasn't in suits or boardrooms. The version that once failed to protect the only person who ever stood beside him. And here's what I want to ask you. If someone you once left behind suddenly returned with power, would you feel fear? Or guilt? Or maybe both? Marcus placed the phone face down on the table, then looked at Claire. Cancel the rest of my day. You sure? No, he said quietly. But cancel it anyway, because somewhere in this city, Naomi Trask had just stepped back into the game. And this time, she wasn't here to build. She was here to burn. The address came in a second message. No name, just coordinates. Marcus recognized the neighborhood immediate Telliard Industrial, East Side, by the river, years ago. He used to walk there at night when he couldn't sleep. Back then, it was warehouses and ghosts. Now it was real estate gold, startups, art spaces, and secrets. He didn't tell Claire where he was going. Didn't bring his assistant, no driver. Just keys, jacket, memory. By the time he arrived, dusk was folding the city in half, light bleeding into shadow. The building looked abandoned, but one window glowed dim amber. He climbed the narrow stairs. At the top an open door, and there she was, Naomi Trask. Same sharp cheekbones, same fire in her eyes, but older, not defeated or forged. She didn't smile, didn't offer a seat. You took your time, she said. Marcus stepped in slowly, letting the silence answer for him. He looked around. Sparse furniture, whiteboards filled with formulas, sketches, names. This wasn't a home. It was a war room. You've been watching, he said. Longer than you think. She picked up a tablet and slid it across the table. He scanned the screen. It wasn't about the yacht. It wasn't even about Claire. It was a dossier on a man named Elliot Renshaw. Marcus frowned. He's gone. Retired 5 years ago. Naomi raised an eyebrow. That's the story. But follow the trail. Shell companies. Back channels. Fake boards. Marcus read faster. His breath slowed. Because suddenly, it made sense. The audit that destroyed Naomi? The smear campaign? The deals that vanished the moment she spoke at that diversity summit? Renshaw had ties to all of it. But why now? Marcus asked. Why resurface now? Naomi stared at him, quiet for a beat, then said something he wasn't ready for. Because the next target isn't me. He looked up. She said it clearly. It's you. The air in the room went still. He tried to process, but his mind went blank for a second. Why would he come after me? Naomi folded her arms. Because you're visible now. You're not just the ghost behind the funds anymore. You're the man they tried to humiliate on a yacht and failed. And that, she said, makes you dangerous. Marcus stepped back, processing, trying to remember all the handshakes, the silent rooms, the names that smiled too easily. Could it be true? He whispered, mostly to himself. I thought I'd made it past this. Naomi's voice cut him off. We don't get past it, Marcus. We build past it, layer by layer, deal by deal, until they realize. She leaned in. They can't erase us anymore. Now let me ask you, have you ever realized the fight you thought was over was actually just on pause? Because that's what Marcus felt now. A war he didn't know was still happening until it reached his door again. Naomi tapped the tablet once more. Help me expose him, she said, not just for me. She held up a folder only labeled with Claire's family name, but for every girl they'll come after next. And Marcus? He didn't say yes. Not yet, but he didn't walk away either. And that was a beginning, because what Naomi had planned next wouldn't just clear her name. It would threaten to dismantle everything Marcus had built to stay invisible. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat in his penthouse, lights off, watching the skyline like it was a chessboard, silent, waiting. Naomi's folder lay open on the table. Claire's family name stared back at him in black ink. Dalton. The same Dalton who had offered him a seat at the table. The same Dalton who once tried to erase Naomi with a single email chain masked, buried. But now uncovered. Could Claire know? Or worse, could she be protecting them? At 6:12 a.m., his phone vibrated. "Claire, are you awake?" the message read. He called, no hesitation. She picked up instantly. "I need to ask you something," he said, before she could speak. "Okay. Did your father ever do business with Elliot Renshaw?" Silence. Long enough to mean yes. "Then Marcus, you need to come to the house." "Why?" "Because if Naomi's back, my father's already moving." She hung up. The Dalton estate sat outside the city-gated, towering, everything built to intimidate. Marcus hadn't been there in over a year. When he stepped into the foyer, Claire was already waiting. No makeup, barefoot, a file in hand. She led him to the library, closed the doors behind them, then placed the file on the table. Inside, contracts, financials, timelines, traced through 5 LLCs, all leading back to Renshaw. "My father told me they were clean deals," Claire said quietly. "He said the funds were anonymous." "He lied." Marcus didn't look surprised. He looked tired. "You want out?" he asked. Claire met his eyes. "I want truth, even if it burns everything." He studied her carefully. "Because here's the truth most people won't say out loud. You can't change a legacy without first admitting what it cost others." And Claire? She was finally doing that. But at what price? "Let me ask you, would you expose your own family? If it meant saving someone they tried to destroy, would you destroy your own name to protect someone else's?" Because that's what Claire was standing in front of. And Marcus? He didn't speak. He turned the folder back around. "I need one more thing," he said. "What?" "A direct trail from Renshaw to Naomi's audit, something that connects the dots so clearly. No one can spin it." Claire swallowed, then nodded. "I'll get it." That night, Naomi returned to Marcus's office. She looked at him differently. "You saw the file." He nodded. "Then you know we can do this," she said, "together." He didn't respond right away, because deep down, there was one truth he couldn't shake. If they pulled this off, they wouldn't just take down Renshaw. They'd expose Dalton Holdings, shake the very structure that Claire was still part of. And Marcus? He wasn't sure if he was ready to lose her in the process, because trust was a rare currency. And in this game, it was worth more than capital. But Naomi, she'd already made peace with risk, and when she handed him the final document, a timeline of events, emails, code names, whispered, "This is the blueprint for justice, but you have to choose what kind of legacy you want. Now I'll ask you, if you had the chance to rewrite your story, not just for you, but for every name that never made the headlines, would you do it, even if it meant burning the bridges behind you?" Marcus closed the folder, then looked out the window, and for the first time in a long time, he felt the fire return to his chest. But he also knew the next move wasn't legal. It was personal, because someone else had just reached out. And this time, it wasn't a warning. It was an invitation. The invitation came by hand. No email, no text. Just a black envelope left with the doorman, sealed. No name, no sender. Insidian card, thick, embossed. No words, just a symbol. A triangle inside a circle. Marcus hadn't seen it in 15 years. But he remembered. It was Renshaw's mark. A signal, an offer, a threat depending on the angle. He stared at the card for a long time, then placed it on his desk beside Naomi's folder and Claire's disclosures. 3 lives, 3 truths, 1 fuse, already lit. The card included coordinates, a location uptown, private lounge, one-night access. Marcus knew exactly what this was. A final negotiation. Not in court, not in press, but in the room where real decisions are made of kind that never make headlines. At 9:02 p.m., he arrived alone. The lounge was silent, floor-to-ceiling windows, a skyline that looked like a crown made of glass. Inside only one man, Elliot Renshaw, older now, slower, but still carrying the confidence of someone who never had to say please. He stood as Marcus entered. "I wondered if you'd show," Renshaw said. Marcus didn't sit. "Make it quick." Renshaw smiled. "You always were impatient." He poured 2 glasses of scotch, slid one forward. Marcus ignored it. "So what's the offer?" he asked. Renshaw leaned back. "Simple, walk away. Disappear again. I'll clean your name behind closed doors. No headlines. No damage. Claire keeps her empire. Naomi gets her silence bonus." Marcus laughed once, cold. "You still think this is about money?" "It's always about money," Renshaw said. Marcus stepped closer. "No, it's about power. And the only reason you're offering this is because you know you're losing it." Renshaw's jaw tightened, just for a moment. Then he said, "Don't confuse temporary noise with structural change." "I'm not," Marcus replied. "I'm building structural truth." And that silenced the room, because for the first time, Renshaw saw it. Marcus wasn't bluffing. He was ready. "Let me ask you something. If the man who once tried to erase you sat across the table and offered to fix it all, with one handshake, would you take it? Would you sell your silence for a clean record? Or would you burn the bridge, even if it meant walking the ashes alone?" Marcus reached into his pocket, pulled out Naomi's file, set it on the table. "You have 48 hours, he said, "to make a public admission. Full retraction, signed. Or I release everything." "You won't," Renshaw hissed. "It'll drag you down too." Marcus's voice dropped. "I'm not afraid to fall anymore." He turned, walked out, left the scotch untouched, and the storm already behind his eyes. Back in his car, his phone buzzed. Claire, 2 words, "I'm in." And Naomi, she'd already booked the press. Now the clock was ticking, and what none of them knew was that Renshaw wasn't done playing yet, because the final blow was going to come from inside their circle. The next morning, everything moved fast. Claire had gone public. Her statement aired live on financial networks and trended within 20 minutes. "My family's legacy is built on silence. Today, I choose truth. I stand with Naomi Trask, and I stand with Marcus Harlan." It was brave, bold, and dangerous, because within an hour, Marcus's private servers were hacked. Emails leaked. Internal memos spun out of context. Some called it sabotage. Others called it self-inflicted. But Marcus knew better. This wasn't Renshaw. This was someone closer. He paced the edge of his office, Naomi watching from the window, tension thick in the room. Then came the final hit. An anonymous leak falsely accusing Marcus of manipulating Claire, using her to orchestrate a takedown for personal gain. It was well-timed, ugly, designed to turn allies into liabilities. Naomi read it and froze. "I know who did this," she whispered. Marcus turned to her. "Who?" She didn't speak. She just pulled out her phone, tapped once, and played a recording. Claire's voice. Not public, not meant to be heard. "If this works, I walk away with the board." He doesn't even see it coming. Silence. Marcus stared at the floor, chest rising, not from rage, from disappointment, because it wasn't the betrayal itself. It was how believable it had felt, their conviction, her courage, her need for justice. Had it all been strategy? Naomi didn't say "I told you so." She just asked, "What now?" "Let me ask you something. If someone you trusted stood beside you while helping burn the ground under your feet, would you strike back or step away and let history finish the lesson?" Marcus didn't shout, didn't flinch. He just picked up his jacket. "Where are you going?" Naomi asked. "To the final press meeting," he said. "But Claire." He looked back, calm. "She can have the board." And then he added, "Without venom, without weight, just truth. Because I'm building the room where the next generation won't need anyone's table." The press room was full. Marcus stood alone at the podium. He didn't defend himself, didn't name names. He simply said, "What you've seen isn't a scandal. It's a mirror. And it's time we stop flinching from our own reflection." He announced a new Fund Naomi initiative, 100% owned, 100% independent, built not for legacy, but for repair. And then he left. No applause, no headlines begging for it, just footsteps into sunlight. And as the cameras turned off and networks scrambled to reframe the story, Claire sat alone in a penthouse, a folder in her lap, a letter from Marcus inside. No anger, just one sentence, handwritten. "Power shows its face when we no longer need it to speak." And Naomi, She was already on her way to the next meeting because the work had just begun. And Marcus? He never looked back because some legacies aren't built in marble or gold. They're built in silence survived and truth finally spoken.